I'm sitting in my grandfather's mahogany-paneled study, watching my Uncle Richard flip through property deeds with trembling hands. His face has gone white. Behind him, my cousins Marcus and Elena are arguing in hushed, frantic whispers. The family lawyer, Mr. Henderson, adjusts his glasses and clears his throat for the third time. "This can't be right," Richard mutters, his voice cracking. "These properties, they're all in her name?" "He's talking about me. Sarah, the quiet granddaughter who just got kicked out of the family business a week ago. The one they thought had nothing. The one they underestimated. But let me back up. Because this story doesn't start in this room. It starts 3 weeks earlier at my grandfather's funeral with a secret that would change everything. My grandfather, Samuel Morrison, built Morrison Holdings from nothing. Real estate empire spanning 3 states. Hotels, commercial buildings, residential complexes. When he died at 87, the whole family assumed his wealth would flow through the traditional channels, to his son Richard, who'd been running day-to-day operations, and then down to Richard's children, Marcus and Elena. I was the outsider. My mother was Samuel's daughter, but she'd married, below her station, a high school teacher. When she died in a car accident 10 years ago, I became the family charity case. Given a small job in accounting, barely tolerated at family dinners, constantly reminded that I should be grateful for the opportunity. As the only woman in my generation willing to work in the business, they made sure I knew my place, taking notes, filing papers, staying quiet while the men talked. At the funeral, while everyone else networked and played politics, I sat alone in the back pew. That's when Mr. Henderson, grandfather's longtime attorney, slipped me a sealed envelope. "Your grandfather wanted you to have this privately," he whispered. "Don't open it until you're alone." That night, in my tiny studio apartment, I opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Inside was a letter in grandfather's handwriting and copies of property deeds. Lots of them. "Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and the vultures are probably circling. You think I didn't notice how they treated you? How they looked right through you during board meetings, dismissed your ideas, made you feel small. How they treated you like a secretary instead of the sharp business mind I know you have. But I noticed everything. For the past 15 years, I've been quietly transferring my most valuable properties into your name. Not the business, that's Richard's headache now. But the real wealth, the properties that generate millions in passive income annually, those belong to you. $47 million in real estate, sweetheart. 37 properties across 3 states. All paid off, all profitable, all yours. I had Henderson structure it legally through trusts to avoid inheritance taxes. You're set for life. But here's the thing, don't tell them yet. Let them show you their true colors first. Let them think they've won. Then, when they've revealed exactly who they are, you'll know what to do with this power. Use it wisely. Justice, not revenge. Love, Grandpa Sam." I sat in stunned silence for hours, studying the deeds. The Morrison Plaza downtown, mine. The luxury apartment complex on 5th Street, mine. The hotel chain that was the family's crown jewel, the properties were mine, even though the management company still belonged to Richard. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Marcus. "Family meeting tomorrow. Time to discuss your future with the company." I smiled in the darkness. If only he knew. The next morning, I walked into the Morrison Holdings conference room like I had 100 times before. Richard sat at the head of the table, flanked by Marcus and Elena. The family lawyer wasn't there, just family. "Sarah, sit down," Richard said, his tone colder than I'd ever heard it. "We need to talk." I took my usual seat at the far end of the table, pulling out my notebook like always. Ready to take notes, ready to be ignored. "We've been discussing the future of Morrison Holdings," Elena began, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "With Dad gone, we need to make some difficult decisions about staffing and family involvement." Marcus leaned forward. "The thing is, Sarah, we've realized we can't carry dead weight anymore. The company needs to be leaner, more efficient." "We're letting you go," Richard said bluntly. "Effective immediately." I looked up from my notebook, meeting their eyes. "I see. May I ask why?" Richard laughed, actually laughed. "Why? Sarah, you're a glorified bookkeeper. You add no value. You sit in meetings taking notes like a secretary. You've never brought in a single client, never closed a deal, never showed any real initiative. Plus, Elena added, we need the office space. Marcus is bringing in his MBA buddy from Harvard to restructure our investment portfolio. We're being generous, Marcus chimed in. 2 weeks severance. That's more than we legally owe you. I nodded slowly, closing my notebook. I understand. When would you like me to clear out my office? Today, Richard said. Security will escort you out. We've already packed your things. As if on cue, building security appeared at the conference room door. I stood up, straightened my blazer, and extended my hand to Richard. Thank you for the opportunity, I said calmly. I've learned a great deal working here. Richard barely shook my hand. Yeah, well, good luck out there. The real world's tough for women without real skills. As security walked me out, I heard Elena whisper to Marcus, God, she took that well. I almost feel bad. Don't, Marcus replied. She was never really family anyway. And, honestly, having another woman around was just awkward in client meetings. That afternoon, sitting in a coffee shop across from the building I'd just been escorted out of, I called Mr. Henderson. Sarah, I heard what happened. I'm sorry. Don't be, I said. Grandfather warned me this would happen. Can we meet tomorrow? I have some questions about the properties. The next day, in Henderson's office, I spread the deeds across his desk. Tell me everything. What exactly do I own? Henderson smiled. Your grandfather was very thorough. You own 37 income-producing properties. The Morrison Plaza generates $2.1 million annually in rental income. The Fifth Street apartments, $1.8 million. The hotel properties, well, Richard's company manages them, but you own the land and buildings. They pay you lease fees they don't even know about. It goes through a shell company. How much total? Annual income? About $4.7 million after expenses. And that's conservative. Property values have increased significantly since these transfers began. I sat back in my chair. I was 28 years old, and I was secretly worth nearly $50 million. There's more, Henderson continued. Your grandfather included a clause. If Richard's company defaults on the lease payments for the hotel properties, which they won't because the payments are automated, but if they did, management control reverts to you. Interesting. And Richard has no idea about any of this. None whatsoever. Your grandfather was very careful about the legal structures. Everything was done through trusts and LLCs. The ownership is completely hidden from public records. I thanked Henderson and walked out into the city that I now secretly owned large pieces of. But I didn't feel victorious yet. I felt patient. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched the family's true nature reveal itself. I'd submitted my resume to several companies, landed a few interviews, but I wasn't in any hurry. I had time to observe. Marcus moved into my old office and immediately started making changes. He hired his Harvard friend, Tom Bradley, at $150,000 a year, 3 times what they'd paid me. Tom's big idea? Sell off some of the underperforming real estate to invest in cryptocurrency and tech stocks. I learned this from Jennifer, the receptionist, who'd always been kind to me. We met for coffee, and she filled me in on the office gossip. They're calling it modernizing the portfolio, she said. Tom's pushing hard to sell the Morrison Plaza and some of the residential properties. Says real estate is old economy thinking. My blood ran cold. They were talking about selling my properties. Properties they didn't even know they didn't actually own. Richard seems hesitant, Jennifer continued. But Marcus and Elena are pushing hard. They think your grandfather was too conservative, too stuck in the past. That evening, I called Henderson again. What happens if they try to sell properties they don't actually own? Well, they can't complete a sale without clear title, which they don't have. But they could start the process, put properties under contract, before discovering the ownership issue. It would be embarrassing and potentially actionable, depending on how far it went. And the hotel management agreement? Still in force. They're actually doing well. Your lease payments are coming in ahead of schedule. Richard's a good operator, even if he's not a good uncle. I made a decision. I want you to draft a letter to Richard's company. Inform them that there will be a formal reading of my grandfather's complete will next Friday. Include all beneficiaries and interested parties. Sarah, are you sure you're ready for this? Almost. I need them to make one more move first. The next Monday, Jennifer called me in a panic. Sarah, you need to know what's happening. They've signed a letter of intent to sell Morrison Plaza to a development group. Tom convinced them it was undervalued. The deal's worth $15 million. $15 million. For a property worth at least $25 million, generating over $2 million in annual income. And they were selling it because they thought they needed quick cash for Tom's investment schemes. I thanked Jennifer and immediately called Henderson. They're trying to sell Morrison Plaza. How do we stop this? Well, they can't actually complete the sale. But we could let them get deeper into the process. The further they go, the more educational this becomes for everyone involved. What do you mean? They'll have to provide proof of ownership for due diligence. That's when they'll discover the property isn't actually theirs to sell. The buyers will walk away, probably with some harsh words about wasting their time. Richard's reputation will take a hit. I thought about grandfather's letter. Justice, not revenge. How much damage could this do to their reputation? Considerable. In real estate, your word and your ability to deliver are everything. If word gets out that Morrison Holdings can't deliver clear title on their own properties, well, it raises questions about their competence. Let them proceed, I decided. But send that reading notice today. Schedule it for this Friday. I want maximum attendance. Richard, Marcus, Elena, their spouses, Tom Bradley if he's still around, Yumi. Make it formal. Sarah, what exactly are you planning? Justice, I said. Just like grandfather wanted. By Wednesday, the family was in full panic mode. Jennifer kept me updated through text messages. Tom's freaking out. Property records search came back weird. Lawyers are asking questions about title. Richard's locked in his office on the phone with someone. Sounds angry. Elena just screamed at someone on the phone about impossible and there must be a mistake. Thursday afternoon, I got a call from Marcus. His voice was strained. Sarah, this is awkward, but we need to ask you something. Did grandfather ever mention, did he ever say anything to you about property ownership? Any weird legal stuff? Not really, I lied smoothly. Why? We're having some title issues with the property sale. Probably just paperwork errors, but, well, the will reading is tomorrow anyway. Henderson says he has some additional information about grandfather's estate. I'm sure it's nothing major, I said. See you tomorrow. That evening, Henderson called me one final time. They've had to withdraw from the Morrison Plaza sale, he said. The buyers were not happy. Word's already spreading through the real estate community that Morrison Holdings couldn't deliver clear title on their flagship property. How's Richard taking it? Not well. He's been calling me all day demanding to know what's going on. I've maintained attorney-client privilege, but told him all questions will be answered at tomorrow's reading. Any word from Tom Bradley? Henderson chuckled. He submitted his resignation this afternoon. Apparently, he doesn't want to be associated with a company that has fundamental ownership questions about its own assets. Perfect. Friday morning, I dressed carefully. My best suit, the one I'd worn to grandfather's funeral. I arrived at Henderson's conference room 15 minutes early, taking a seat on the far side of the table. Just like always. Richard stormed in first, followed by Marcus and Elena. They all looked like they hadn't slept. Richard's usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie crooked. Henderson, what the hell is going on? Richard demanded before he'd even sat down. We can't sell our own properties? The title company is saying there are ownership questions? This is insane. Please sit down, Richard. All will be explained. Marcus and Elena took their seats, both shooting confused glances at me. Elena's husband, James, arrived next, looking uncomfortable. He was a decent man who'd always been kind to me, even when his wife wasn't. Sarah, Elena said suddenly, what are you doing here? This is a family matter. Sarah is here because she's a beneficiary, Henderson said calmly, opening his briefcase. Richard laughed bitterly. Beneficiary? Henderson, with all due respect, my father left Sarah a small trust fund. Maybe $50,000. This isn't about her. Actually, Henderson said, spreading documents across the table, this is very much about her. The room fell silent. I've been Samuel Morrison's attorney for 37 years, Henderson began. In all that time, I've never seen him plan anything as carefully as he planned this. Samuel loved all of you, but he was deeply disappointed in how some of you treated Sarah over the years. Richard's face flushed. What are you talking about? Samuel began transferring property ownership to Sarah 15 years ago. Quietly, legally, and irrevocably. Sarah, would you like to tell them what you own? I looked around the table at their faces. Confusion. Disbelief. Growing horror as they began to understand. Morrison Plaza, I said quietly. The 5th Street apartment complex. The Riverside Hotel properties. The Maple Grove Shopping Center. The downtown parking structures. 37 properties in total. Marcus started laughing. That's impossible. Those are company properties. Dad's properties. No, Henderson said, sliding documents across the table. They're Sarah's properties. They have been for years. Your father retained management control through Morrison Holdings, but ownership transferred to Sarah through a series of trusts and legal entities. Elena grabbed the nearest deed, her hands shaking. This is dated 12 years ago. Sarah would have been 16. Grandfather planned ahead, I said simply. Richard was reading now too, his face cycling through emotions. Disbelief. Understanding. Fury. You knew, he said, his voice dangerous. When we fired you, when we kicked you out, you knew you owned everything. I knew. And you said nothing? You let us humiliate ourselves. I thought about Grandfather's letter. About years of being dismissed, ignored, treated like a secretary. About them trying to sell my property without even knowing it. You fired me, I said calmly. You told me I added no value, that I was dead weight. You had security escort me out like a criminal. You said I was never really family anyway, that having another woman around was just awkward. The room was dead silent. Did you think those words wouldn't have consequences? Marcus slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. You can't own everything. What about the company? What about our livelihoods? The management company is still yours, I said. Morrison Holdings still exists. You can still run the day-to-day operations of the properties. In fact, you'll have to, since that's what the management agreements specify. But you own everything, Elena whispered. You could kick us out anytime you wanted. I nodded. I could. Richard leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, he looked old. Defeated. What do you want? He asked quietly. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. My city in many ways. I want exactly what Grandfather wanted, I said. Justice. Not revenge. I turned back to face them. Richard, you're a good property manager. The hotels are profitable, the buildings are well maintained, the tenants are happy. I don't want to change that. But things are going to be different. Different how? Marcus asked suspiciously. First, the disrespect stops. I'm not the charity case anymore. I'm not the secretary or the note-taker. I'm the owner. You work for me now, not the other way around. Richard nodded slowly. Second, no more risky investment schemes. No more selling properties to fund cryptocurrency adventures. We stick to what we know, real estate. What about Tom's recommendations? Elena asked. Tom Bradley is gone, I said. And his recommendations were to sell my properties to fund his get-rich-quick schemes. That's never happening. I walked back to my chair but didn't sit down. Third, I want transparency. Monthly reports on all properties. Financial statements. No more treating me like I don't understand the business just because I'm a woman. You want to be involved in management? Richard asked. I want to learn, I corrected. Grandfather left me these properties because he believed I could handle the responsibility. I intend to prove him right. Marcus cleared his throat. And our positions? Our jobs. I looked at each of them in turn. Marcus, you're good with numbers, but you're too eager to chase trends. You can stay, but in a subordinate role. No more unilateral decision-making. Elena, you have good relationships with tenants and contractors. That's valuable. But the condescension toward me stops immediately. We're equals now. Richard. I paused, choosing my words carefully. You're the best property manager I know. Grandfather trusted you to run operations for a reason. I need that expertise. But you also need to remember that respect goes both ways. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Sarah, I owe you an apology. We all do. The way we treated you, it was wrong. We dismissed you because you were young, because you were a woman, because we thought we knew better. Yes, you did. Can you forgive us? I thought about that. About Grandfather's letter. About the difference between justice and revenge. Grandfather wrote me a letter, I said. He told me to let you show your true colors before revealing the truth. He said to use this power wisely, for justice, not revenge. I sat back down at the table, this time in the chair at the head. Here's what justice looks like. You get to keep your jobs, because you're good at them. The company stays profitable, because that benefits everyone. But the hierarchy has changed. I'm not the grateful charity case anymore. I'm the owner. And revenge would look like. Elena asked quietly. Revenge would be firing all of you immediately. Selling the management company. Managing the properties myself or hiring strangers. Letting you face the consequences of treating family like an inferior just because she's a woman. But you're not doing that, Marcus said. No. Because Grandfather was right. Justice is better than revenge. Justice builds something. Revenge just tears down. Henderson had been quietly taking notes throughout the conversation. Now he cleared his throat. There are some practical matters to discuss. Sarah, as the property owner, you'll need to make some decisions about the management agreements. I looked at the family, my family, complicated as they were. Keep the existing agreements, I said. Same terms, same structure. But I want quarterly meetings to review performance and discuss any major decisions. That's very generous, Richard said. It's practical. You know these properties better than anyone. Grandfather trained you well. Elena was still staring at the property deeds. Sarah, can I ask, why didn't you just tell us? After Grandfather died, why didn't you just reveal all this immediately? I thought about that question. It was fair. Because I needed to know who you really were, I said. If I told you immediately, you would have treated me well out of self-interest. I needed to know how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing. And now you know, Marcus said quietly. Now I know. And despite everything, you're still family. Flawed family, but family. Richard stood up and extended his hand to me. This time, it was different from the dismissive handshake he'd given me 2 weeks ago. Partners? He asked. I shook his hand firmly. Partners. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new office, Grandfather's old office, which I've claimed as my own. The family business is more profitable than ever. Turns out, when you combine Richard's operational expertise with my financial oversight and long-term thinking, things work pretty well. Marcus has actually thrived in his new role. Without the pressure to make big, flashy decisions, he's focused on the details and become genuinely good at operational analysis. Elena has expanded our tenant services and improved occupancy rates across all properties. Tom Bradley? Last I heard, he was working at a cryptocurrency startup that folded 3 months later. Some people never learn. The family dynamics have changed completely. At our quarterly dinners, I'm no longer the quiet woman taking notes in the corner. I'm an equal participant, often leading the conversations about family business strategy. They ask for my opinions now, value my input, treat me as the business owner I always was. Richard and I have developed a genuine working relationship built on mutual respect. He's teaching me everything Grandfather never had the chance to: property valuation, market analysis, tenant relations, construction management. But the most important thing I learned wasn't about business at all. Grandfather's final lesson wasn't about money or property or power. It was about patience, dignity, and the difference between justice and revenge. He gave me the tools to destroy the family that had dismissed me, and instead, I chose to rebuild it. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd revealed everything immediately after his funeral. If I'd walked into that family meeting with property deeds and demanded respect. But I think Grandfather knew what he was doing. He knew that the only way to truly change our family dynamic was to let everyone show their true selves first. Let the consequences play out naturally. Let justice emerge from the situation itself, rather than imposing it from above. The properties continue to appreciate. My net worth is now approaching $60 million. But the real wealth isn't in the real estate portfolio. It's in the family dinner where Marcus actually asks my opinion about a potential investment, where Elena includes me in her stories and treats me as an equal, where Richard introduces me to business associates as his partner instead of his niece who helps with the books. It's in the respect I earned by choosing justice over revenge. Grandfather would be proud.